Hi there. We are back again with another episode of Get to Know Us, this time with Gravedream. She's one of our collective members and also makes really awesome sound collage type music. And today actually marks the 2 year anniversary of her cover. She did a cover of Toxic by Britney Spears, and that is out 2 years today. So we're also celebrating that. And I am going to get her to come on right now. Okay.
Hi,
Hey,
how are
how are you?
you?
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, great. It's good to talk to you again and see you today.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I was just letting everybody know that today's the um, 2 year anniversary of your cover of Toxic by Britney Spears. And that's really cool. And yeah, we're going to ask you some questions and get to know you better.
Yeah.
So I always like hearing about like how people first got into music as a listener. So like maybe like your first album or song that you bought or got into. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels kind of embarrassing, but my first album that I got into was Meteora by Linkin Park. Um, it feels a little cringe, but it
Yeah.
it's the truth, and honestly, it kind of makes sense and tracks with where I am now.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I could totally see that. That's pretty funny. Okay, yeah, and I guess then when did you like start writing and recording your own music?
Um, that was in high school. I was homeschooled for a lot of high school, so I had a lot of time on my hands to just make music. I downloaded Ableton and started making beats, and it all kind of spiraled from there.
Oh, yeah. That's really awesome. So you're like completely self-taught too then, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really awesome. Um yeah, so I guess well let's talk a little bit about this cover, Toxic. Yeah, what can you tell us about it? Like what inspired you to do it and yeah.
I don't know, it's just it's a song that growing up in the early 2000s I heard a lot, so it just has a very particular spot in the back of my head, and I went a while in my adolescence without hearing it, but then I started listening to it again, and it still captures a certain feeling and really does what it sets out to do. Um, and I just kind of wanted to do my take on it, and it ended up being something that sounds entirely nothing like it, but
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely like totally different than her version, of course, but it's like it's still like you like if you know that it's a cover, then you're like, oh wait, you totally can tell then, you know. But if you just hear it without knowing, you might not. It might kind of like pass over you that it's actually a cover. Um, but yeah, are you like a big Britney Spears fan at all, or is that just because the song was something that you heard a lot that you felt compelled to do it, cover of it?
I think I am a casual Britney Spears fan. I'm not a diehard Britney Spears fan, but I am a fan. It's
Yeah.
I'm not someone who's I've listened to a lot of Britney Spears, and I have a lot of favorite Britney Spears songs, but I'm not gonna say that I'm a Barb level of stan. Uh, but I do love Britney a lot, and it's been with everything that has been happening in her life lately that's been so thoroughly documented. I think she is just a very compelling figure even outside of her music, and yeah, I
Yeah.
have a lot of respect for her.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like things might be looking up for her. It's
Hopefully.
it's just yeah, it's kind of hard to tell for sure. But yeah. Um and yeah, I wanted to also ask you about so we just recently put out a compilation for the Virginia Anti-Violence Project, and you gave us your song Eclipse. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about about that track. It's really, really cool too.
Thank you. That was a song that I made when I was like 18 and living in Alabama for a period of time, um, just to like get away from the city for a bit. And I was like in a very weird headspace, and I was just working on this weird beat. Um, and I don't know, that was like the most. That and Toxic were both recorded in Alabama there. And that was like an interestingly productive time because I was so removed that I could really just try and make stuff.
Yeah, and you use so many different like layers of sounds and samples and stuff. It's really, really interesting the way you make music. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that. And of course I wanted to ask you about Squares in a Five that you put out with us. That I love that song so much. Yeah, anything you wanted to talk about in terms of like that song and even just like your production style, because I think it's really interesting and it's, yeah, I think it's that people would be curious to hear how you kind of go about doing your music.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I always started out with sampling. Like the very first things that I did in Ableton were just take little bits of songs I was like really obsessed with at the time and sort of mess with them and like turn them into the kind of stuff I wanted to hear in like sample based music. And like when I started producing, I was listening to a lot of Death Grips, and they do a lot of interesting sampling on their first album. And also like Danny Brown and his use of sampling in the beats that he chooses, which are just like, it brings a different kind of, I don't know, it's just an interesting use of sampling that I always kind of wanted to emulate. And so that's been really important to me. And that's why my songs end up sounding so layered, because I just like pick apart little pieces of sound and place them in places until they sound right. Um, but yeah, I feel like Squares in a Five is definitely that. I was in a weird place once again, and like, I guess that song comes from a moment of just like feeling very overwhelmed and kind of, I don't know, not necessarily defeated, but very overwhelmed by the system and the forces around or whatever. And so I feel like all of the random jumbled thoughts in my head sometimes manifest themselves as the little sounds that I weave in and out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And yeah, and then speaking of like your influences, I know you just talked a little bit about the Death Grips, but like if you wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the musicians or bands that, have influenced you over the years.
Yeah, I have really lately been listening to a lot of Billy Woods, anything Billy Woods, and also a lot of More Mother. Um, I feel like I tend to gravitate towards music that is a little um, stark or bleak sometimes, and Billy Woods is a good way to capture that sometimes. Just through his lyricism and the beats he chooses, they're just very particular. Um,
Yeah.
I like um, I like a lot of PJ Harvey, and she's been a big influence, and definitely like vocally someone who I draw a lot of influence from.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big PJ Harvey fan, so that's really interesting. Like, what is your favorite stuff of hers, or is there an album that stands out to you, or
A lot of my favorite songs are off of Aha Her, um, but I do have a lot of favorite songs off of Dry and Is This Desire to.
yeah,
I love just her vocal tone and the way she composes and like weaves her textures and melodies together. It is very pleasing, even when it's not conventional.
yeah, yeah, her voice is incredible, and she has like quite a big range in terms of like how she can make her voice sound, and her music is also very like varied, but it does all of it does have kind of like dark undertones or whatever to it. But yeah, that's really interesting. And so did you say right now, like, so you probably already answered us like what you're listening to right now. So you mentioned Billy Woods. Is that what you have on rotation pretty much
Uh,
mostly?
a lot of the time lately, recently, I've really gotten into Silk Money, who does a lot of similar things to that, but I guess it carries a similar moodiness to it. But I really like the beat selection. It's a little different, and I that's been in heavy rotation and definitely an influence. A lot of black dresses and
Oh
definitely.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense too. And you have like you often like incorporate like a grungy or noisier like type vibe sometimes to your music too, which is
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah, it's really cool. Um, but yeah, so I guess I wanted to ask you a little bit about are you in Chicago right now? Yeah, so I thought so. So I wanted to see, well, you know that we do a lot of mutual aid work or and you know our tape proceeds go to different organizations and whatnot. So I was curious like what is going on in Chicago, or like if you were to put out an album and you were gonna put some of tape proceeds towards a group, like what do you think you would be doing?
Well, Chicago is a city where there are a lot of mutual aid groups and a lot of people doing really good things. I definitely really support Brave Space Alliance here in Chicago. They are a Black and queer-led organization who pro- provide a lot of services for people in Chicago who need them. And there is also the community advocacy group, Good Kids Maad City, and they do a lot of really awesome work. Um, so I feel definitely blessed to be in a city where there are so many things of that sort happening.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I'll have to look more into those organizations. I think right now you're the only artist we have in Chicago, although I know that Kelly Francis Corrado, I think, is originally from Chicago, but she's not living there right now. Um, and I think actually think the organization that she's giving the proceeds for Star Farms, I think it's called. I think they are in Chicago. They do they like have a city garden and grow foods and whatnot and provide like job training and whatnot for folks to like with disabilities to get like experience like you know working with other folks and things like that. So it sounds like that was a pretty interesting group too. Um, but yeah. So yeah, I guess I wanted to also kind of see what your thoughts are. I mean, you know, with Grimalkin, we're trying to make you know small changes either within the music scene, but then also within like the music business, you know, which are kind of like different. But and you know, there's so many different problems within both of those things everywhere. So I guess I'm always curious to hear what other people think, like if they had an opportunity to like make a change within either their local music scene of whatever's happening with you with there locally or within the music industry or business in a larger capacity, like what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. Um, well, I think like a very big change that needs to happen is just that it needs to be more financially viable for musicians to pursue music and get paid for their work. I think we live in a world where like a vast number of people are underpaid for their work, and I feel like art is no different. But I think that there are, platforms that are a little bit better, like Bandcamp, which is really helpful for us artists. But I feel like there is still more that could be done to really address that, especially when there is so much money to be made as like Spotify is obviously doing.
Yeah, streaming is really terrible. I think that's pretty much hurt all musicians, even ones that did sort of be able to make a living. But like with all the arts, it's just not very valued in our society. So it's unfortunate. And but yeah, I think you mentioned in some cases I'm having a little hard time hearing you. I'm a little I'm a little hard of hearing too. But I think you mentioned Bandcamp as being a pretty decent platform for paying folks. So yeah, and yeah, hopefully, yeah, and paying artists fairly, because even music labels often don't do that themselves either, especially like bigger music labels.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, hopefully, in time that there'll be folks like Ramalkin and whatnot that are able to show that there are better ways that you can support artists, and pay them fairly. Um, yeah, hopefully. And I guess like with that, I mean, it's been really awesome talking to you. And I guess I wanted to just sort of leave with like if you had any either parting words of wisdom, advice, or hopes for the future, either for yourself or in general.
Um, I guess in general, I just would like for, I mean, as idealistic as it sounds, I would like for the world to be a more gentle place. But I guess in a more tangible sense, I would like for there to be an expansion of things like mutual aid and helping people who need access to so many things that people don't get, especially living in Chicago. You see so much of that stuff. So, like, aspirations for the future generally is for things to get better and for us as a society to make a change. Um, on a more micro sense, um, just looking forward to stability and a brighter future.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. And uh, yeah, it was great. It was great seeing your face again and being able to talk to you. And I know we'll talk again soon in the near
Yeah, of
future. But yeah, thank you so much. I'll
course.
talk.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks everyone who watched, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. Take care.